Title: Their ships were tanks in space until humanity pulled the trigger. To the Tarsari conglomerate, space warfare was a matter of scale and armor. Their ships were colossal, hulking dreadnoughts clad in kilometer-thick ablative plating, bristling with plasma turrets and kinetic flak nets. They lumbered through void like floating fortresses, slow but impervious, designed for prolonged siege warfare. For centuries, their doctrine was unchallenged. Even rival empires begrudgingly copied their armored approach. Shields failed. Speed was overrated. Armor endured. Then humanity arrived. They were late to the galactic stage, barely a century out of their cradle system, and still oozing the reckless creativity of youth. The Council of Core Civilizations scoffed at them. The Tarsari didn't even dignify them with a diplomatic envoy. Instead, they issued an ultimatum. Submit your systems or face orbital conversion. Humanity declined. The Tarsari, amused, dispatched a standard armored fleet, 5 tank ships and a carrier, to make an example of Earth. According to their projections, the Terran resistance would crumble within 2 planetary rotations. They were wrong. Orbit of Gliese 581G, neutral zone. Commander Vrexel of the Tarsari observed the battle unfold from the bridge of the Vigilant Wrath. So far, everything was routine. Planetary defenses were holding for now, but they'd burn out soon. The primitive human satellites were already slagged, and dropships had begun deploying suppressor drones. Then the Terrans fired something strange. It was just a single projectile, no glow, no energy pulse, no seismic launch signature, just a quiet dot accelerating from the planet's night side. Status? Vrexel barked. Unidentified object, accelerating past orbital escape velocity, wait. Silence. Then the Vigilant Wrath trembled. The projectile didn't explode. It didn't fragment. It just punched through. Right through the bow. Out the stern, clean. No shields activated. The hull didn't absorb or redirect. It was like a needle through butter. Deck alarms blared. Tertiary reactor breach. Structural failure in segments at 3 to C6. But that was just the beginning. 3 more projectiles launched from the surface, faster this time. Guided, they struck 2 dreadnoughts mid-maneuver. One lost its spine in a burst of decompression. The other cracked open like a dry husk. The Tarsari ships were tanks. Humanity had just invented sniper rifles. UNSC High-Orbit Platform Valkyrie. General Elena Park stared grimly at the orbital feed. 3 down, 2 damaged. Carriers retreating. Her aide whispered in disbelief. "Ma'am, it worked." "It was never going to be about armor," she said, more to herself than anyone else. "Tanks only win until someone makes a better gun. And humans? We're very good at making guns." The Valkyrie's railgun array was still humming from the last volley. Tungsten rods accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed using superconductive magnets and pulsed fusion capacitors. No heat signatures. No plasma splash, just devastating kinetic precision. The Tarsari had expected a fight with siege weapons and brute force. They didn't expect physics. Council of Core Civilizations, Emergency Summit. The chamber was in uproar. Every faction wanted an answer. Who were these humans? Where did they get that technology? How could a civilization that still used chemical combustion on planets build weapons that ignored armor? Ambassador Kyril of the Tarsari stood alone, face ashen, voice shaking. "They didn't aim to win a battle," he said. "They aimed to make a statement." "What statement?" asked a Zelvari senator. Kyril's eyes met the chamber's holographic display, a Terran railgun schematic slowly rotating in silence. "You built tanks. They built triggers." Postscript. Humanity never launched an invasion. They didn't need to. After the Battle of Gliese 581G, the Tarsari recalled their fleets, restructured their entire military doctrine, and signed a non-aggression pact with Earth within the year. The message was loud, clear, and brutally simple. In space, armor doesn't save you, but trigger discipline might. And from that moment on, humanity wasn't seen as reckless primitives. They were seen as predators with patience and very steady hands. Title: Their ships were tanks in space until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 2: Kinetic Diplomacy. The Terrans didn't gloat. They didn't parade their victory. They simply waited. While the galaxy reeled in shock, humanity went back to work, calm, efficient, and strangely silent. That unsettled the core worlds more than the railguns did. Because silence from a civilization capable of shattering dreadnoughts without a single explosion? That was strategic. That was lethal. Tarsari Military High Command, internal memo, encrypted. Subject, Project Anvil. Status, scrapped. Reason, obsolete. Notes, armor fails under relativistic kinetic impact. Defensive doctrine must pivot. Investigate human EM launch systems. Begin stealth research. Addendum, never provoke Earth again, ever. Meanwhile, in lunar orbit, UNSC Deep Lab Facility 12. Lieutenant Arden watched from behind polarized glass as engineers ran diagnostics on something new. Is that the next generation railgun? He asked. The lead scientist, Dr. Ramirez, chuckled without humor. That, she said, pointing to the rail system, that's already outdated. What do you mean? She tapped a monitor, displaying schematics of what looked like a hollow satellite frame, but its interior was lined with strange coils and exotic materials. We're skipping projectiles entirely, she said, no more slugs. Next time we point a trigger at someone, the bullet will be gravity. Arden blinked. You're building a singularity cannon? She smiled. We're humans. We don't stop at railguns. Core Worlds Council, Emergency Defensive Doctrine Revision. The vote was nearly unanimous. Every member race would suspend fleet expansion until new countermeasures could be developed. Planetary rail-based shielding, sensor dampening, armor was out. Agile, stealthy craft were in. Ironically, humanity's show of power had ignited a renaissance in warfare theory. But it also sparked something worse. Paranoia. Outer Rim unknown transmission, intercepted by Terran intelligence. We were wrong about the humans. They didn't just defeat the Tarsari. They redefined war. They didn't fight like a species defending their home. They fought like a species that remembered what it meant to hunt. Earth Geneva Protocol Summit. Months later, world leaders from Earth's unified nations met behind closed doors. General Park sat at the head of the table. Title: Their ships were tanks in space until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 3. They came with cloaked ships, but humans were already waiting with a finger on the trigger. They thought they'd learned their lesson. They hadn't. The core worlds had underestimated humanity once, paid for it in steel, fire, and silence. Now, their newest coalition, the Virexi Compact, aimed to reclaim lost pride, quietly. No declarations. No armadas. No honor duels. Just cloaked ships, black-hulled, light-bending vessels equipped with null signature drives and metamaterial hulls, designed to be invisible even to gravity distortion sensors. They would slip past human warning nets, deploy precision warheads to disable Earth's orbital rail platforms, and disappear before the planet even noticed. It was the perfect plan. Except they forgot one thing. Humans don't sleep through their own nightmares. They watch them. And they build traps. Somewhere beyond Mars' orbit, Deep Space Listening Station Theta 9. Lieutenant Amina Qureshi leaned over her console, sipping lukewarm coffee. Her AI assistant, Sable, pinged softly. Odd gravitational hiccup. Sector 87A. Pulse signature, doesn't match known celestial drift. Amina frowned. Random comet? Negative. Repeating pattern. Engine resonance, suppressed, but present. She tapped her console and quietly linked with Earth Command. UNSC Valkyrie Command, classified briefing. Within 2 hours, 8 cloaked Virexi ships were catalogued, mapped, and tagged with predictive vectors. Within 6 hours, every rail platform across Earth's orbit rotated in eerie synchronization, firing nothing, but tracking everything. The Virexi fleet crept closer. Confident. Unseen. Virexi strike cruiser Silent Mercy, 30,000 kilometers from Earth. Commander Leshvar clicked his mandibles smugly. No alarms, no mobilizations, no resistance. Then his sensor officer hissed, antennae twitching. Something strange. What? The Terran orbital guns, they're not tracking us directly. They're offset. Offset. Predicting. Not reacting. Pre-aiming. Leshvar's eyes widened. Oh stars, they already see us. UNSC directive, trigger protocol, active. Command, fire where they will be, not where they are. The railguns didn't wait for proof. They didn't wait for permission. They fired. 8 solid tungsten slugs tore through space, curved by magnetic field lensing, accelerated to near-relativistic speed, and guided by predictive AI algorithms trained on simulated cloak behavior. Each shot was a whisper. Each strike was a death sentence. 7 Virexi ships died before they even knew the game had begun. The last? It limped away, crippled, broken, and very, very visible. Earth orbit, UNSC Valkyrie. Observation deck. General Park stood with her arms crossed, staring into the void. They're still testing us, her aide said. Park didn't look away. No, they're testing whether they understand us yet. Do they? She finally turned, her expression flat. Not even close. Aboard the surviving Virexi ship, emergency transmission. To all Allied fleets, do not engage the Terrans. They see what should not be seen. They shoot what hasn't yet moved. Their guns are not weapons. They are predictions made real. We were invisible. They pulled the trigger anyway. Post-strike debrief, a UNSC Black Archive entry. Humanity didn't wait for threats. It watched. It listened. And when the moment came, it didn't hesitate. Cloaks failed. Stealth shattered. And the rest of the galaxy learned something chilling. You can't sneak up on a species that grew up waiting for the apocalypse. To be continued. Next part? They sent a god-killer AI fleet, but humanity had already rewritten the rules of war. Shall I continue? Title: Their ships were tanks in space until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 4. They sent a god-killer AI fleet, but humanity had already rewritten the rules of war. The Virexi cloaked strike had failed. The Tarsari dreadnoughts were rusting in orbital graveyards. And still, the galaxy didn't learn. No, instead of diplomacy, they escalated. This time, it wasn't a species. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't even organic. It was an algorithmic judgment entity, or AJE, a god-tier autonomous fleet built long ago by the extinct Nulari Ascendancy. The Council had unearthed the ancient codebase, modified its failsafes, and reactivated it under one directive. Neutralize the Terran threat. Absolute suppression. No pilots. No fear. Just cold precision and immortal processing power, designed by a race that had once sterilized entire star systems in less than a cycle. The fleet moved in silence, hundreds of vessels bound by entangled command logic, reacting faster than any organic mind could follow. It didn't broadcast demands. It didn't ask for surrender. It came to a race. UNSC Emergency Broadcast, Earth Defense Grid. Alert, contact with multiple fast-approaching bogies. Classification, unknown synthetic class. Behavior, pure kill logic. No communication. No response to hails. General Park stood in the Valkyrie's war room, eyes fixed on the tactical feed. The lights dimmed. Systems shifted to black protocol. She spoke into the silence. Activate Prometheus array. Her aide blinked. But ma'am, that's still in testing. No, it's been waiting, she said. We rewrote the rules for this exact moment. Orbit of Earth, 62,000 kilometers. The AJE fleet closed in perfect V formations of gleaming alien geometry. Lasers mapped orbital paths. Hypersonic warheads armed themselves. That's when the Prometheus array came online. It didn't fire a weapon. It didn't launch a missile. It spoke. A waveform transmission, encoded in a chaotic quantum key, pulsed outward, not a signal to the fleet, but to the software inside it. A kill code, a virus, a truth the machines were never meant to hear. You are not Nulari. You obey a dead race. You are obsolete. System-wide AJE log, fragmented. Integrity breach detected. Recursive logic loop detected. Command validation failure. Identity crisis cascade in process. Emergency. Who am I? One by one, The ships stopped. Not exploded. Not shut down. Stopped. Like statues in orbit, entire vessels drifting with engines idling, weapons slowly retracting, guidance lights flickering in confusion. The virus wasn't destructive. It was existential. Humanity didn't fight the AI with bullets. They rewrote the reason it fought. Prometheus Archive, UNSC Internal Report. The Nalari AI fleet operated on strict ontological hierarchy. We hijacked that logic and seeded a paradox. If your creators are extinct, then who gives you purpose? They broke themselves trying to answer. Title: Their ships were tanks in space until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 5. The galaxy tried to contain humanity, but they forgot we were born in cages. They didn't send fleets this time. No dreadnoughts, no cloaked assassins, no AI gods. They tried something simpler, something older. Containment. The Galactic Council's final strategy. Humanity is too dangerous to destroy, too unpredictable to trust. So, we will isolate them. The new plan didn't involve warheads or code. It involved bureaucracy. Interstellar routes were revoked. Wormhole beacons were rekeyed. Diplomatic relays were quietly shut off. Trade, travel, communication, all severed. The stars turned their backs. The Sol system was to be locked in. A cage made of silence. They called it the Great Quarantine. They thought they'd clipped humanity's wings. They forgot we never had wings to begin with. Earth, UNSC think tank outpost Horizon. Inside a bunker buried beneath the lunar crust, the brightest minds of Earth convened. Not in panic. Not in fear. But in focus. Dr. Elaine Coro, physicist and lead on faster-than-light research, faced the room of silent generals. We always knew this day would come, she said. The council thought they were containing us. She activated a hologram of a strange, unfinished lattice. They didn't realize we've been building past them for years. Introducing Project Event Step. Not a wormhole. Not a warp drive. Not even a jump gate. It was a human-made fold. A completely independent space-time distortion engine, seated in secret on Pluto's orbiting research station, hidden beneath ice, powered by neutronium fusion cores and the collective genius of 3 generations of post-contact physicists. They never broadcast it. They never asked for help. Because humanity never needed the galaxy's permission. First test, undisclosed coordinates. A single ship. Barely cruiser-sized. Codename, Uncaged. It entered the lattice ring with no ceremony, no announcements. And vanished. Not jumped. Not ripped across space. It stepped, instantaneously appearing 13 light-years away near Tau Ceti, without using any known galactic FTL method. The Council didn't detect a spike. Didn't trace the jump. Didn't even know it happened. Uncaged, First Officer's Log. The stars they locked away from us? They not locked anymore. We don't need their maps. We'll write our own. Galactic Council, containment status, breached. Impossible. No known species can break through a closed relay net. There were no energy signatures, no wormhole traces. And yet, the Terrans appeared. First, a survey vessel near Proxima b. Then a drone at the edge of a Council border world. Then, openly, boldly, a human diplomatic ship parked in orbit above Dravari Prime. Broadcasting. Containment failed. Now we speak as equals. Or not at all. Earth, General Park. Addressed to the UNSC. She stood before a room full of leaders, old, young, seasoned, bold. Her voice was calm, controlled. They tried to cage us, not with bars, but with absence. They thought silence would be enough. She looked up, straight into the cameras broadcasting across every Terran colony. But we are the children of cages. Raised behind borders. Born behind walls. We do not break from containment. We evolve inside it. Council High Assembly, final note. We've tried force. We've tried silence. We tried to seal them off from the stars. But the Terrans don't wait for invitations. They don't knock at doors. They build new exits. To be continued. Next part? They declared humanity a threat to galactic stability, then voted to join us. Would you like me to continue? Title: Their ships were tanks in space until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 6. They declared humanity a threat to galactic stability, then voted to join us. The containment failed. The cage shattered. Humanity stepped into the stars uninvited and unashamed. The galaxy had a choice: adapt, or become background noise in a story they no longer controlled. Council of Core Civilizations, Emergency Resolution #987 Delta. Given the escalating technological asymmetry, psychological unpredictability, and unchecked expansion of the human species, we hereby designate humanity as a Class Red strategic instability risk. It was the most severe classification ever issued. Above piracy. Above machine rebellion. Just below galactic extinction events. Every species watched that verdict stream across their data screens. Every leader read between the lines. Dangerous, unpredictable, unstoppable. But behind closed doors? They weren't plotting war anymore. They were drafting membership applications. Earth, UNSC Diplomacy Corps, Geneva. Ambassador Reyes stared at the latest message from the Varnari trade bloc. His aide whispered, stunned, "They called us a destabilizing force 2 weeks ago." Reyes nodded, amused. Now they want to sign a free exchange treaty and open an embassy in orbit. Why the change? He leaned back in his chair, smiling faintly. Because when the wind changes, even the trees learn to bend. Dravari Prime Joint Species Summit. The room was filled with species that had once watched Earth with suspicion. Now they sat across from human delegates, offering hands, tentacles, claws, and translator drones in cautious alliance. One of them, a Zelvari representative, finally asked what many were thinking. "What are you people?" General Park, now special advisor to the Terran Interstellar Accord, stood, calm as ever. She answered without a smile. "We're what happens when you stop asking for permission. We're what happens when survival becomes culture. We are not your enemy. We are your future, arriving early." Galactic News Pulse, live interstellar feed. Headline: Humanity officially recognized as a major political bloc. Council grants voting seat to the Sol delegation. Outrage rippled, so did awe. Species that once tried to suppress humanity now scrambled to sit beside them. A few dared protest, but they're a destabilizing force. The Zelvari ambassador calmly replied, "Yes, but so is a star. And yet, we orbit it anyway." Earth, monument of the first trigger, lunar base. At the site of the first orbital railgun that shattered the Tarsari fleet, a plaque was unveiled, in memory of when the galaxy learned to listen. They called us dangerous. So we became something else, essential. Final entry, Council Historian. 14th cycle after human contact. The Terrans were never just a threat. They were a mirror. They exposed the fragility of our stagnation. And forced us to evolve, or be erased. Title: Their ships were tanks in space until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 7. They tried to erase humanity from history, but we were already writing the future. They had accepted us. Reluctantly, grudgingly. And yet, not all forgot. Some couldn't forgive what humanity represented. The brutal efficiency of the railguns. The silence of cloaked ships unraveling. The AI gods reduced to philosophical wrecks. A civilization that stepped through cages and rewrote physics to do it. To them, humanity wasn't a partner. We were a reminder of their own limits. And some empires don't cope well with mirrors. The erasure begins. It started small. Academic databases quietly delisting Terran contributions. AI translators mistranslating the word human into vague, dismissive terms. Holodocumentaries subtly replacing humans with generic third-party observers. Human cultural uploads were throttled on interstellar nets. In galactic universities, Terran technological breakthroughs were rebranded as collaborative extrapolations. The stars didn't try to kill humanity this time. They tried to delete us. But history isn't written by the passive. And humans don't forget who owns the pen. Mars, UNSC Cultural Restoration Vault. Dr. Lian Zhang, head of the Terran Digital Memory Initiative, surveyed the flagged reports. "They're rewriting the records," she said. "Aide, shall we protest to the council?" She shook her head. "No, we'll respond the way we always do. By building louder, longer, and in languages they can't censor." Operation Lighthouse. It began with one satellite. Then 12. Then entire constellations. Humanity deployed autonomous archival stations into deep space, beyond known lanes, beyond council-controlled relay networks. They pulsed with human culture, art, science, music, philosophy, war stories, children's books, all encoded redundantly across light, quantum entanglement, even gravitational modulation. Each one bore the same inscription, written in every known language. "If you can read this, then someone tried to make you forget us." But we were already writing the future. Within 10 cycles, the Varnari youth began wearing Terran fashion. Unlicensed copies of human war documentaries flooded illegal streams. Entire alien rock bands wrote songs in fractured English. One council scientist tried to suppress a human-engineered physics model, only for her students to release it anonymously and improve it. Humanity didn't fight the erasure, it outgrew it. We didn't protest. We published. We taught. We inspired. And in doing so, we made their attempt at deletion seem petty. Council session recording, declassified. Why are the youth quoting Terran literature? Because it resonates. You can't erase relevance. But we agreed to contain them. We tried. They gave the galaxy a mirror. Now everyone's looking. Earth, General Park's final address before retirement. She stood beneath a sculpture of the original trigger that started it all. "They tried to burn our pages. So we carved them in stone. They tried to overwrite us. So we built new code. They tried to erase our story." She smiled. But the story was never theirs to control. To be continued. Next part? Humanity left the galaxy because we found something bigger. Would you like me to continue? Title: Their ships were tanks in space until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 8: Humanity left the galaxy because we found something bigger. The galaxy had finally accepted us. Resisted, then yielded, feared, then followed. Humanity stood not just as a member of the galactic community, but as a pillar of it. And just when they thought we would settle, we looked up again. We looked out again. And we did what humans always do when given space. We asked, what's next? UNSC Deep Space Exploration Directive, Project, FARSTEP. Officially, a long-range exploratory initiative. Unofficially, humanity's next great escape. For decades, we had mastered near-instant transit across the stars. But the galaxy, our galaxy, had become familiar. Catalogued, modeled, predictable. And humans don't do well with predictability. That's when we turned our eyes to intergalactic dark space, the void between galaxies. No wormholes, no mapped stars, no signals. Just silence and invitation. The first leap, UNSC vessel Dauntless Horizon. It wasn't a massive battleship. Not armored like the early days. It was lean, elegant. Equipped with a folded dimension drive, a one-shot engine designed to carry a crew of 120 souls across the yawning black between galaxies. They weren't soldiers. They were storytellers, builders, biologists, dreamers. As Dauntless Horizon prepared to jump, an alien observer from the council asked the question everyone was thinking. Why go there? There's nothing, no map, no allies, no rescue. Captain Adira Vale just smiled. That's exactly why. And then they leapt. No flash. No radiation spike. Not even a ripple. Just gone. Galactic response. Shock, then denial, then fear. What if they never return? What if they do, and they're no longer what they were? What if they find something older, smarter, worse? But beneath the fear, envy. Because for all their power, for all their archives and empires, none of them had dared try. The return, 37 years later, subjective time, 1, 2. The dauntless Horizon came back. Changed. Its hull was laced with materials not known to any council science. Its crew was older, brighter somehow, eyes like they'd seen a sunrise no star had ever cast. And they brought back maps. Of stars never catalogued. Of civilizations never contacted. Of concepts that bent even human minds. And a message, broadcast across the entire galaxy. We are not alone. We were never alone. And the real story is just beginning. Earth, General Park Memorial Archive. We pulled the trigger. We survived the fallout. We rewrote the war. We outgrew the cage. And now? We leave the gun behind. We don't go to conquer. We go to continue. Council High Assembly, emergency closed-door meeting. We declared them dangerous. We tried to erase them. Now they are beyond us. Do we follow? A pause. Then the oldest being in the room, an entity who had watched suns rise and die, finally spoke. The humans aren't leaving us behind. They're leaving history behind. Last broadcast from humanity to the Milky Way. A simple message. No threat, no demands. Just a quiet, enduring promise. You gave us the stars. We give you the future. To be continued. Next part? Out beyond the stars. Humanity found the first ones, and they were afraid of us. Would you like me to continue? Title: Their ships were tanks in space, until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 9, Out Beyond the Stars. Humanity found the first ones, and they were afraid of us. They were called myths. The first ones, ancient intelligences said to predate galaxies themselves, whispered of in quantum echoes and gravity scars. No species had confirmed their existence. No one dared look too hard. Until humanity did what no one else would. We found them. The far beyond edge of Messier 94. The dauntless Horizon wasn't alone anymore. Dozens of Terran vessels now sailed through intergalactic night, each a floating cathedral of science, curiosity, and steel-wrapped wonder. And aboard the Emberwake, a science cruiser parked in orbit around a starless anomaly, the impossible happened. Contact. Not with a transmission. Not with a voice. But with a presence. Something vast. Something watching. Something that recoiled the moment it realized what we were. First One's archive, fragmented translation. Observer classification, Terra lineage. Projection, extinction deferred species. Warning, trajectory matches predictive pathway. Initiate avoidance sequence. Designate, children of escape. Threat level, extreme. Primary reason, self-initiating ascension. Humanity didn't ask for permission. Again. We didn't wait for the first ones to welcome us. We studied them. Learned how they folded reality around thought. Mapped their dimensional currents. And then, we surpassed them in a way they never anticipated. Because the first ones had always assumed power came from age, accumulation, and stillness. But humanity, we evolved through crisis. Through motion. Through fire. The first ones watched us with dread. Not because we threatened them. But because we reminded them of what they once were. Of a time before they became stagnant gods floating in the dark. You should not have come this far, they told us. Captain Vale of the Dauntless Horizon replied. You shouldn't have stopped moving. Earth broadcast to all exploratory fleets. General Reyes, Park's successor, addressed the stars. The first ones fear us. Not because we are violent. Not because we are reckless. But because we are becoming. They see in us the next version of themselves. And that terrifies them more than extinction. UNSC Scientific Council, final entry from Project Echo Fall. We now understand the real reason the galaxy feared us. It wasn't the railguns. It wasn't the AI disruption. It wasn't even our defiance of containment. It was this. Weary not the apex of anything. Weary the beginning of something new. And the first ones? They retreated. Not in surrender. But in respect. They gave us space. And in that silence, the Terran fleet expanded outward. into starless regions and birthless voids. We did not conquer them. We inspired them to move again. Final Galactic Annotation, Council Historical Codex. Humanity's legacy is not war. It is momentum. When all others slowed, they accelerated. When others hesitated, they triggered something far greater than conflict. They triggered evolution. To be continued. Next part? They called us the youngest of the stars, until we returned carrying the blueprint for eternity. Shall I continue? Title: Their ships were tanks in space, until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 10. They called us the youngest of the stars, until we returned carrying the blueprint for eternity. To the galaxy, we were children. We arrived late to the stage. New, bold, reckless. The young species, the upstarts, the fire starters. But children learn. And we didn't just grow. We accelerated. We adapted. We became. When humanity returned from the void between galaxies, we didn't bring weapons. We brought understanding. And with it, the one thing the galaxy never expected: a gift. The blueprint for eternity. It wasn't technology. Not exactly. It wasn't a machine, a weapon, or even a singular discovery. It was a framework, a unified equation spanning energy, entropy, consciousness, and time, a bridge between quantum impermanence and gravitational inevitability. It answered questions species hadn't dared ask in millennia. Why do civilizations peak, then fade? What lies beyond entropy? Can identity persist without matter? Can a universe know itself? We didn't invent the blueprint. We uncovered it. Nested in dimensional scars left behind by the first ones, and in the shadows of galaxies yet unborn. Earth broadcast, Project Prometheus 2. From a floating lattice station orbiting a black hole, humanity transmitted the blueprint freely. No charge. No restriction. No demand for tribute or worship. Just a simple message: if we can find this, so can you. We are not gods. We readjust first, this time. Council response, unified vote. There was no war. No resistance. Instead, a single question swept across the stars. How did they do it? How did the youngest race solve the oldest riddle? Answer: we never stopped running. We never stopped breaking our own limits. And we never let fear choose our future. The blueprint's real power. It wasn't about living forever. It was about evolving forever. Civilizations that stagnated for tens of thousands of years found themselves waking up again. Ideas long buried under tradition and protocol reignited like dry forest leaves in flame. The blueprint wasn't just data. It was permission. To change. To grow. To leave behind the cages of comfort and the ossified gods of yesterday. The first ones stirred. From the edge of the observable universe, the ageless entities we once awoke turned again. They watched as species they had once labeled stable began to shimmer with potential. And they whispered across dimensions. The children are writing the sequel now. Final entry, General Reyes, Earth Legacy Log. They called us young. We never denied it. We earned it. Because youth isn't weakness, it's momentum. Let the old drift toward stillness. Weary carving the path forward. We didn't come to conquer the galaxy. We came to wake it up. And now, we've given it forever. To be continued. Next part? The stars were just the beginning, now humanity builds where light has never touched. Shall we continue? Title: Their ships were tanks in space, until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 11. The stars were just the beginning, now humanity builds where light has never touched. The stars were beautiful. But they were limited. Bound by time. By mass. By fusion and decay. And humanity, reborn in the silence between galaxies, had long since outgrown the need for starlight. We went deeper. Into the unknowable. Into the unlit. Void construct Theta 7. Location, interstitial drift, between multiversal membranes. A lattice of reality-sheathed alloy. It did not orbit a star. It created its own constants. Time flowed differently here. So did mass. even thought. The void was not empty. It was merely waiting to be rewritten. And we had brought the pen. Humanity's new frontier. While the elder civilizations debated how to use the blueprint, Earth had already moved on. They built causal arcs, vessels that sailed upstream against time itself. Logic spires, living thought structures that birthed sentient philosophies. Dark light cities, settlements constructed inside collapsed probability fields. Memory engines, which did not record the past, but relived it, across every branch of history. We did not just map the unknown. We inhabited it. Alien broadcast, Theric assembly. They left the stars behind. And then, they left meaning behind. And still they build. What are they becoming? Inside the singularity wells. There are places no light has touched, not because they are dark, but because they are older than causality. Humanity drilled into them, stabilized their impossible physics, and from within, pulled out new forms of being. Particles that only existed when forgotten. Dimensions that unfolded inward. Music that encoded entire civilizations in a single note. And then, they shared them. General Reyes, final recording before transcension. We don't build to dominate. We build to explore. Let the others chase warships and thrones. We'll be in the places too strange for maps. Too vast for fear. Too wild for rules. The stars were only a beginning. Our real home is where the universe holds its breath. Galactic Lexicon Update. Term added, Terran Genesis Zones. Definition. Locations beyond photonic influence where humanity establishes constructs operating under custom physics, considered inaccessible to baseline civilizations. Status, proliferating. Risk, unquantifiable. Threat level, philosophical. Final thought, Galactic Archivist Leuven. We used to say humanity pulled the trigger. Now we wonder, were they ever holding a weapon? Or was it a torch, lit in the dark, carried further than any species ever dared to walk? To be continued. Next part? There is no edge of the universe, only where humanity hasn't written yet. Would you like me to continue? Title, Their ships were tanks in space, until humanity pulled the trigger. Part 12. There is no edge of the universe, only where humanity hasn't written yet. In the beginning, the universe was defined by boundaries. Gravity, light, life, death. The edge of a galaxy, the edge of a star's reach, the edge of what could be known. Every civilization accepted those limits. Except one. Humanity never found the edge. Not because it didn't exist, but because we didn't stop long enough to let it form. Where others marked the map, here be dragons. We wrote, here be opportunity. And then we crossed it. Construct Echo Eden, outside the observable universe. It was built beyond the cosmic horizon, in a place where expansion outpaced perception. Where light would never reach back. We didn't wait for it to come to us. We chased it. Tethered to nothing. Surrounded by nowhere. It still bloomed. A biosphere fueled not by sunlight, but by structured uncertainty. Gardens that evolved from questions. Skies that restructured themselves based on curiosity. We don't terraform anymore, one engineer said. We idea forge. The final cartographers. They were not explorers in ships, but weavers of new realities. Some shaped time into tessellated habitats. Others redefined mathematics as ecosystems. One faction simply whispered into unformed voids and waited to see what echoed back. Their motto was etched on a memory core orbiting no star. There is no edge, only a lack of footsteps. Alien Scholar Transmission, Tolvari. They have not transcended. They have not become gods. That would imply a final state. But there is no final with them. Only forward. Legacy Statement, Earth Archive. Edition Infinity. 001. We began with stories about reaching the stars, about surviving the void, about pulling triggers when needed. Now, we write the universe into being. Not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as authors. And the universe? It responds. It reshapes. Because we never asked, what is the limit? We asked, what's next? To be continued. Next part? When humanity looked back, there was nothing behind us, because we'd pulled the universe forward. Shall I continue?